Welcome to the Daybreak Star Radio Network. You know our motto, the only radio network officially indigenized in the airways. I'm Harris, Station Program Director, joined, of course, today by my co-host, Noe, one of our amazing interns. And Noe, today is another special day. We got another amazing interview. Could you please let everybody know who we have the honor and pleasure of speaking with today?
Yes, today we are speaking with an amazing poet, writer, and visual artist, Sarah Gould. And yeah,
Awesome. I will kick off the first question and then we'll go back and forth. And Sarah, please welcome to the Daybreak Star Radio Network. If you want to introduce yourself, please introduce yourself and let our listening audience become more familiar with you.
Okay. Tatala. Sarah Gould. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Gould. I'm, as Noe said, a poet, writer, and visual artist, and I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. Could you please tell us about your creative journey and how you got started as both a visual artist and a writer?
Well, since early childhood, I've been really interested in writing and art. When I first picked up a pencil, that's when I started like getting going on everything. I used to make picture books and draw comics. Shout out to Betty and Veronica, okay, because they really shaped a lot of what I do. And let's see, when I was 9, I finished my first story for the elementary school I was going to, a little bit, like kind of. I ran out of paper and I wrote to be continued in all caps at the bottom, but considering I never finished a story before that, I called a win.
Noe?
oh yes. So could you describe a little bit of your creative process and the inspirations behind your work?
Sure. So my first instinct is usually just to jot things down. Whether it's a sketch or an idea, I always have to get it on paper first because my combination of mental things going on makes it so it's really hard for me to remember certain things. That's why I keep a sketchbook and a notebook. And yeah, some things that inspire me as well. That let's see. Just, I feel like one of my inspirations that like comes from that always jotted down mindset is just how I want to be connected to myself and also to my land and my people. Um, so being connected to land people, as I tend to call it sometimes, land dash people, because the land aren't separate from the people and the people aren't separate from the land. Um, yeah, so I try to connect that with my struggles with mental health. That's something that really comes up a lot for me. And yeah, I'm rambling now. Sorry.
Well, thank you so much. That was a wonderful response.
Sarah, as a native artist, how does your how would you define and talk about your heritage and experiences and how they influence your creative work? And are there any specific themes or elements from your background that you incorporate into your art and your writing?
Sure, yeah. My culture plays a huge role in my creative work. I would say that because it really shaped me as a person. I write with a voice that I think is identifiable by my relatives and the people who I come from. And I like to incorporate some of the different themes from ceremonies into my poems as respectfully and as sneakily as I can because those things are private for a reason. I also find a lot of comfort in where I come from, so I like to honor it in the best way that I can, which usually includes like language or like the way things are done, that kind of thing. I also write a lot about my experiences with settler colonialism, which is like, oh, buzzword, but I include some of my personal hardships under this category just because I know everything comes from somewhere, and the kinds of abuse I've had to deal with come from folks who were similarly abused, and their trauma came from boarding school alongside ethnic cleansing and so on and so forth. So I tend to approach like my struggles with family and collective brain chemistry with the knowledge that it didn't start with us, and yeah, it came from somewhere.
Yes. So we also know that you attended University of Washington. So we're wondering how your education there shapes your artistic and literary pursuits. And are there any memorable experiences or mentors, teachers who have influenced you and your work?
Yeah, so I think my education there definitely shaped my artistic and literary situations because I met a lot of really great people there. I met a lot of I guess you would call them peers, huh? A lot of peers. And they really helped to like strengthen my voice that already existed and help bring it out of me a little bit. I had a lot of clubs I was a part of where I'd be able to talk with a lot of creative people and get their feedback and such. And mentors. I have two specific mentors I like to shout out. The first being my professor, Ray Paris. She was my creative writing teacher for a couple years, and she really just like broke me open because I was so afraid of writing about things that were personal to me or things that would be identifiable to people from my past and that sort of thing. And she just like, I don't know if she even knows this, but she gave me the courage, she gave me the push to like just express. And I really am grateful to her for that. Another mentor I'd like to mention is Professor Diane Millian. She works in the American Indian Studies department, but she introduced me to so many Native poets and authors, and their work has inspired me a lot as well. I credit her for like a lot of my knowledge of Indigenous art writing from, the Northwest. And I also, yeah, I just want to thank her too because she's super cool and I learned a lot from her.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Moving on to our next question. Native art often obviously carries cultural significance and storytelling. How do you incorporate storytelling and cultural elements into your creative pieces, both visually and in your poetry?
So something that I heard Sterling Harjo and Tommy Pico talk about on the podcast I was listening to was how funerals are one of the things that like bring a lot of comfort and joy into Native communities, even though they're actually, supposed to be a sad thing. But I really related to that because I was thinking like how like one of the ceremonies I'm sadly most familiar with is the funeral. And but it doesn't seem, it's not all black and scary as it might seem in the movies. It's colorful, it's vibrant, it's a lively experience from my people anyway. And um something that I like to incorporate it through like some of the darker themes that I explore is humor. And something that I pulled from the talk with that Sterling Harjo and Tommy Pico had was that humor can be found anywhere, especially with family and especially with the people that you come from. And I really appreciated that because I think something that I something that I like to do is incorporate just a little bit, sprinkle a little bit of laughter amidst all the sorrow because, it's not all frowns, it's not all gloom. And like there's a lot of brightness and a lot of beauty to be found in some of the things that I've experienced and some of the things that I know a lot of other Native people are going through. So I guess with that, I incorporate my own culture by bringing in some of the lightheartedness and some of the levity that I associate with my family and my relatives.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. It's great. It's a great answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, humor is so important, and finding that balance too between the sorrow and the humor is very important, and something that I really appreciate you highlighting. With the concept of balance, I know it can be difficult in this day and age, with all of our obligations to balance our creative practices and all of that. So how do you find that balance and continue to develop and make space for your creative practices?
Sure. So this is really ridiculous in my opinion because it's not, I don't think I can even recommend the way that I do this. But when I was in university, the first thing I would do is like draw, or the first thing I would do is write. And like sometimes that meant for me like actually neglecting some of my other responsibilities a little bit because in my brain, I feel like, well, okay, for other brains, I think the process might be, oh, I need to take care of my responsibilities so I can feel calm and relaxed and chill when I'm approaching my artwork or my poetry or my writing. But for me, when I'm like working, it's like, gosh, I'm itching
Yeah.
to draw that idea I had earlier, or I'm itching to write that poem. And so I have to do it first. I have to get it down on paper. And that is my version, I guess, of balance is I do my creative things as soon as I can, and then I can relax and do my other responsibilities.
We're all busy. We all have to prioritize, right? We all have that entrepreneurial mindset. Moving on to our next question, Sarah, as your work has gained recognition locally, which is huge kudos to you. Can you share some of the challenges and success that you've experienced in your artistic and writing career, especially in the context of being a Native artist and a writer, please?
Of course, yeah. So some of the challenges that I've experienced is I think my audience, I guess, is so small that my message doesn't necessarily communicate always to everyone who looks at my work or like forms an opinion about my work. And it's not necessarily frustrating because I understand it, but it's also a little bit like discouraging to me sometimes. And it shouldn't be discouraging, but it can be discouraging sometimes because it makes me think like, oh, like no one is gonna get this, or like no one is gonna understand this, or no one will relate to this, or like, I get a little down in the dumps about myself. But most of the time I can overcome it because I know I have like a lot of support from my community and the people who I love. So it's something that isn't like the biggest deal, I guess, but it's also something that I do still think about. And something that has helped me overcome that are actually the ways I've been able to share my work. One example is the yəhaw exhibition I was a part of online during lockdown. I painted this portrait of a friend of mine and I submitted it, and I remember I was really nervous about it because I had never submitted artwork before. And I was like, oh my gosh, like there's gonna be so many people submitting to this, like I'm not gonna get in. And then they were like, hey, we want you to be a part of our exhibition. And they sent me like $300. And you can find it online still. You just gotta look up Sarah Gould and I think Sunlight, I think that's what it was called. But yeah, that was really cool. And I felt like kind of validated. And I shouldn't seek validation like that, but I did feel a little validated for my first entrance into the art realm in that way. Additionally, I found a lot of comfort and security in myself when I share my poems aloud. My friend Howie Echohawk invited me last year around November to share some poems at this event that they were putting on called No F's Giving. I'll call it like that because I don't want to swear. But at No F's Giving, Bougie Natives, I was allowed to share some of my poems, and they were really well received. And like I made some new connections that day, and like I think just connecting with people is like the biggest success of all.
True, so true.
And yeah, that's how I got started, I guess.
One more amazing question coming from Noe.
So with that being said, are there any current projects or upcoming just things that you're working on, anything that you'd like to share yeah, with us?
Yeah, so these days I'm working on a manuscript. And I'm so scared, but it'll be fine because even if no one reads it, at least I did it,
That's
So
good attitude.
I'm really excited about that.
Amazing. And I am so excited to continue to hear about the manuscripts that you're working on. That's lovely. What is a manuscript actually? I'm curious.
As far as I can tell, and mind you, I'm like still like Googling all the definitions of everything, but as far as I can tell, it's a submittable version of your work. So like it has to be formatted a certain way, and like it's got to be a certain length, or according to whoever's asking for it, that their requirements, it has to meet that. So my manuscript is going to be a collection of different poems that I've written over the years, in Times New Roman, I guess. That's how I would put it.
Wow, well, that's so exciting, and we look forward to continuing to just hear more of your work. I'm excited. Hopefully, I know Harris and I are working on developing a new show.
Yep.
Where we're going to be really centering on music, specifically from our Pacifica relatives, but I want to incorporate a lot of poetry and spoken word. And so I know you mentioned feeling empowered and finding a lot of joy in sharing your poetry out loud. So I'd love to be in connection with you for that, and would love to just like broadcast some of your poetry on the station.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, that'd be great.
That sounds awesome.
We trouble you, Sarah, for with just one job. You could just introduce yourself however you want to introduce yourself, and you're listening to Daybreak Star Radio Network. And then, of course, our motto is the only radio network indigenizing the airways.
Okay. I want to introduce myself. So I just say my name, Daybreak Star, and then
You're listening to
the motto.
you're listening to Daybreak Star Radio Network, the only radio network indigenizing the airways.
Yeah, it has.
You're listening to Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The only network that's indigenizing the what?
So, hi, it's Sarah. Why don't you just introduce yourself, say who you are, and you're listening to the Daybreak Star Radio Network.
Okay, I can handle that. Okay. Hi, this is Sarah Gould, and you're listening to the Daybreak Star Radio Network.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah.
I'll send you a copy of it too after the editing team works their magic on it.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks so much. Hope you have a lovely day.
You too. Thank you for your time.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.